So we're going to skip the video, like Chuck said. There's a lot of slides here. Tolby likes to be very detailed in his slides, and I apologize that Tolby couldn't be here. He had to make a trip out to Arkansas for a sales need, and I'm on now.
There you go.
Awesome. So so he couldn't be out here, so I'm filling in. So like Chuck said, my name's Ryan Smith. I am the Vice President of Production at Radius. I'm a co-owner of the company, and basically my day-to-day job is to manage the day-to-day operations of Radius. So I also was the kind of co-producer of the strategy and everything that went into the Super Bowl project as far as Social Media Command Center goes. So I am kind of qualified to be up here to talk about that. So sorry that Tolby couldn't be here. But a little bit about what we're going to talk about today. The strategy, the concept, the technology, the people, the campaigns, and the outcomes around the social media campaigns, and really the whole interactive initiative around the Super Bowl. It wants to skip ahead without me, but when I wanted to go ahead, it won't. Sorry. Okay, so some of the innovations about the Social Media Command Center. We were the first dedicated Social Media Command Center for a Super Bowl, which was cool. We were the largest facility of its kind and the only facility of its kind in the Midwest. We were the first ever real-time monitoring and proactive response effort ever. And we were the first major geo-targeted social media initiative, along with a few other things. We answered a few questions in the social space in Spanish, which means we were the first ever bilingual social media effort and super service effort for a Super Bowl or any other major event. So basically how this all came about is a couple years ago, the Super Bowl host committee came to us and said, we want to use social media, but we really don't know how, so we want to put you on our interactives committee, and we want you guys to basically come up with a strategy to do something really awesome, do something really cool that hasn't been done before. And we sat down, and before we do any work at Radius, we do what we call groundwork. It is a strategic process where we go through a lot of different things, which up on the screen it actually details it. We go through discovery, we go through risk, business case, persona, distribution, metadata, topography, engagement, and all of that gets connected back to a brand strategy. So we basically took the brand strategy of what we were trying to accomplish in Indianapolis with the Super Bowl and built a social media strategy around it. And part of that strategy obviously was the Social Media Command Center, to be able to respond in real time to people who were asking questions in the social media space. So if you remember in Dallas, all of the disasters that happened as far as their infrastructure goes and as far as getting the event to be big and fun for everyone, with all of the stuff that was happening with weather and things of that nature, it ended up being made a little bit worse, and the problems were amplified because people were on social media asking questions, asking for help, and when they weren't getting any, when no one was responding to them, they turned to just straight up complaining. So Dallas was put on a national stage and got to witness firsthand what the power of social media can be, just in the negative side. So our priorities were fourfold. We've started with safety. We wanted to respond to any safety related things that we could find on social media. So we're monitoring for things that happened in and around the city, around the village, or around the city itself, around actually at the NFL experience, anything that people were talking about where there might have been a dangerous situation. We wanted to be able to see it and pass it on to the right people. Super service. We wanted to provide Hoosier hospitality for the 21st century. We wanted to be able to, when people ask a question, we wanted to get them an answer as fast as we could, if we could find that question. Coverage, there's a lot of stuff going on around the Super Bowl, and we wanted to be able to send our content people out and our volunteers out to capture that content so we could repost it. And some of those strategies included the Social 46, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, that we got a lot of content from them. And so basically, and I'm going to show you in a few slides just how complicated it actually was getting content from so many different people and getting it out onto just a couple pages. Finally, amplification. We wanted to find any positive dialogue, especially around influencers. We wanted to see when the celebrities came to town and started tweeting about how awesome we were, we wanted to make sure that everyone in the world saw that and amplified it as much as we possibly could. So we were constantly monitoring for all of these different things for 2 weeks straight. So how did it all work? This is a diagram of the actual Super Bowl host committee. So you can see it's a massive committee with lots of different places that want to do lots of different content, and we are the little dot there in the middle. So the interactives committee was in charge of basically taking every one of these different committees, every one of these different groups' content, and somehow figuring out a way to make it work in the social space or in the online space. Next, we talked about safety a little bit. So how did we interact with the other command centers? Though we weren't the only command center, there were some that were vastly more serious and in a lot of ways much more important than us. This is a photo of the JIC. This is where the FBI and the CIA were actually monitoring for real-time serious security needs and safety needs. We were in charge of basically looking at the social media space, and if we were to find something, some kind of disaster happen, we were going to communicate that back in any dialogue around what we were able to find. Now, that being said, luckily we didn't have to. We didn't find anything. There was nothing bad happened, but I can tell you that Tolby was just on the edge of his seat all the time. He was so sure that something was going to happen, to the point that on Sunday morning he was standing at the windows just walking around looking for people, like dropping bags that were going to explode. But nothing happened, and it was great. So luckily we never had to actually interact with the command center, other than when we had the website got hacked in the morning, so we ended up interacting with them for all of about 5 minutes. So a little bit about how we got all of this information and how we got it actually published. So like we said, the committee is huge. There's a lot of people who have a lot of different messages that they want to convey, and we also had people out on the street who were also finding information and content that we could convey out to the public. All of those things were, we were getting text, we're getting photos, we're getting videos, we're getting PDFs, we're getting tons of different pieces of content that need to get published out to basically the world. It all came to one email address, superbowl@radius.com, and then we had to sift through all of that content, decide which pieces of content were relevant, and actually publish it out to the world. So one cool thing is we actually were the first ever social media initiative to do real-time alerts from a central command post. So the Super Bowl host committee had a command post, a communications command post. So when anything came out, so if the zip line had a 4-hour wait and they were going to shut off selling tickets for the day, if the zip line was to break or something horrible was to happen, we were going to get an alert from the host committee, and then we publish it and get it out to all the different channels, whether it's text message, whether it's email, whether it's social media, whether it's putting it on the website. It didn't matter. We had to get all of those things out, all those alerts out, and the way that we came up with it was just a simple email address. We wanted to declutter and make sure everything went really smoothly. So what we did was everything came to one central email address, and then it went through our editorial team basically, and got published to the correct channel. So a lot of content, a lot going on there. This talks a little bit more about the alert center. Anything that's coming out, event command, social media, event management, all came back to one place to get published out to all the different channels. How it all worked, this stuff's kind of the boring stuff, the risk and all of that stuff, but it ended up coming out to be incredibly important. So we put together a lot of recommendations early on with risk, with things that we needed to be aware of that could happen with people using social media as a whole and putting out things, maybe messages we didn't necessarily want. So in the beginning, we spent a lot of time planning for all of these things, and this kind of just, we talked a little bit about groundwork, and this is how those things came together. So you can see we have personas where we actually come up with who we're talking to. So one of the personas that we knew that we were talking to, one of our target audiences, was a persona we created called Hoosier Hannah. So we knew that we were talking to local Hoosiers. We knew that most of the people, especially for the first week, who are going to be coming down to the NFL Village the Super Bowl Village and all of the NFL experience stuff. We knew that we had to communicate to people from Indiana first, and then second was Super Bowl Sam. He's that guy who's coming in who has a lot of money and is going to the Super Bowl, and we knew we had to be communicating to both of those. So we had, and then we had another persona, which was Globetrotting Glenn. So we have a lot of different personas that we were thinking about whenever we were communicating. So we knew how to talk for the host committee, and the host committee knew that they could send us whatever information they needed, and we could change that around and make it to the voice that we were trying to convey that we came up with a year and a half in advance. So a little bit about this. It looks kind of crazy, but this is so helpful when it comes to creating social media content it doesn't matter what kind of content, whether it's long form content, we're creating blog content or email content or social content. This is a subject topography, and once again we came up with this about a year and a half in advance, and this basically gives us, this is the cure for writer's block. This is basically the main focus points that the Super Bowl wanted us to be talking about, and then we broke them out into different subjects that we could use for communication across all channels. So it's really cool. This just kind of talks about all of these planning efforts that went into place before we ever said a word, before we ever put out a tweet or we ever put out a Facebook post or anything. The concept, like I said, this was all about Hoosier hospitality for the 21st century. So this is the social media command center, or just for Caitlin and I, this is our office. So we actually started building this office out with the understanding that one of the biggest things we would ever do in this office was be the social media command center for the Super Bowl in Indianapolis. So you can see that this is the before, this is the floor plan, and a little bit more, and still in construction, and finally we are complete. We built it out with the entire idea that we were going to be having people from all over the world coming in to see what we were doing. At the time, I think when we were building this out, we didn't. Some people were a little bit skeptical, including myself, on it, whether or not people would care. If we were going to have the social media command center, we're going to be doing this, would people really care? Well, it turned out people cared, and a lot of people showed up, and it was really good. We had a really nice place for them to be, and after 3 months of design, 3 months of construction, and $300,000, we had a pretty awesome looking command center for our Super Bowl. All right, so the facility itself, we were able to put at our highest point during the 2 weeks, we had 50 people, staff and volunteers, coming in and out of the office in 2 different shifts. It's 2,800 square feet, and technically is only supposed to seat 35, but we maxed that out pretty quick on Saturday and Sunday. We have a lot of other boring details about how much Ethernet cable and stuff we have here, but the coolest thing about it is that it's all controlled by an iPad. So we can control, you saw that big giant wall right there, a 9-screen video wall, 9 42-inch flat screen monitors that work as one or work completely separate. It's all controlled by an iPad. So we can put anything up on that TV that we needed and use. It really came in handy for keeping people, when people came into our office and wanted to see what was going on and wanted to interact with the volunteers, and the volunteers are trying to sift through hundreds of thousands of tweets, we were able to say, come look at the pretty wall, and leave them alone. So that's probably what that really expensive wall was best used for during the whole process. And it is one awesome place to watch March Madness, I'm telling you what. But so the technology. This is actually really cool, and I love promoting these guys whenever I can. They've been a huge part of our success in the last 6 months at Radius, is the Awareness Social Media Hub. This is a social media tool. It's very similar to that of Spreadfast and CoTweet and all of those things, but it's to us, it fit our needs for what we needed for the Super Bowl and for what we need for day-to-day client use. So we actually when we came up with the strategy and the idea behind the Social Media Command Center, the cool thing is all we really had to do is repurpose what we do every day at Radius. So we're doing these type of things for our clients every single day, and repurposing it for the Super Bowl wasn't very hard. We just had to plan how many people and the infrastructure around getting all of these people in, and people were going to want to see it. So when it came down to it, we used a tool that we use every single day. We changed tools actually back in late summer of last year because the tool we were previously using we didn't feel was going to be able to stand up to the demands of the Super Bowl, and Awareness stepped up and was pretty awesome all the way through. And this is the dashboard view, so it looks a lot like Hootsuite. That's because they've pretty much integrated a Hootsuite inside it. So it's a great tool. If any of you are in the market for a social media management system, I highly recommend them. This is a little bit about how the team interacted with each other. You're seeing right here a task being assigned. So for instance, when we were looking at these streams, the volunteers were looking through these streams, finding things to respond to, and assigning a task with the response that came through that we had. We had a huge database of responses that people had. So where can I get tickets? What time does the game start? where's the best place to eat, where's the least amount of traffic or the least amount of wait to get into a bar. All of these things, we had pre-planned answers for these things. So the volunteers could go in, actually have an answer already, make it a little bit more fun and a little bit more social, and then send it off to our team by just assigning this task, and our team would go through, edit it one more time, make sure that it is something we wanted to respond to, and actually publish it. Some of the actual responses that we did. So this is how many hotel rooms do we have downtown, stuff like that. It was actually a surprise. Is one interesting thing is right here, there's a few of these are actual questions with question marks. We did a test for the Big Ten Championship. We brought in a group of volunteers from Ball State and basically tested everything we were going to do for the Super Bowl. And what we learned was people don't ask questions as much as they complain or make statements and say things like, I have no idea where to park. So we changed from getting ready to monitor questions to getting ready to monitor statements that we could answer. So for instance, people were saying, I have no idea where the Super Bowl village is. And so what we would do is we would say, well, we're happy to help. Where are you right now? We can tell you how to get there. So we had to battle that whole creepy factor because we were responding to people who weren't asking us direct questions. But at the same time, we never had a single person respond with, wow, that's really creepy, but thanks. It was mostly, it was mostly just incredibly positive responses. Anytime we'd ask a question, it was just mostly, wow, thank you. So that just shows off a little bit about how we did it. The big wall. So this is, if you didn't have a chance to come by our office, this is a little bit, gives you a glimpse of what was on the wall at any given time. So this is a application that was built by Ball State specifically for the Super Bowl. So we worked with them. This is a sentiment monitoring tool that we're still working on to build out and make even better. They delivered this the day before we started working. So it was kind of a last minute, really, we worked really hard to get this thing going. And it takes about 350 terms that we choose and monitor sentiment around it and then displays it in a really nice way that we can put up on a board so that people can come by and just see what's going on without actually having to sift through and tweets and everything. So when one of the executives from the host committee came over, we could show them exactly what was happening without having to sit down and do a report and everything. We could show them in real time, which was really cool. These are some of those keywords that we used. This is an application that shows us where people are tweeting from. This was not taken during the Super Bowl. If it was, this app became really hard to use because you couldn't see anything. It was nothing but those little arrows. So, but it was kind of cool to see just go from a day-to-day like this of people tweeting to all of a sudden you couldn't even see the streets on the map because there were so many people out there tweeting. This is a Gecko board of some of the stuff that was going on, including some of our to-dos that were being assigned. So in the morning, if a to-do is assigned that we need to monitor something specific, for instance, the LMFAO concert, or maybe the zip line was going to be closed really early, so we monitored for certain things, we can actually put those on the board so people can see what we were talking about. So this was really helpful for Radius staff to be able to know what we were looking for at any given time. And finally, our news maps. Everyone loves these. These are, you can see the different colors. This is a free service, and it's huge for the way that we operate, because at Radius we take trending topics and we create content around them to benefit from the fact that there's a trending topic. And these stories get bigger with basically the higher the trend. So this was really good to narrow down, and especially when we looked at the entertainment area, we could see lots of stories about celebrities showing up to Indianapolis, so we could actually see that in a lot of ways before other people were seeing it. This is the database we talked about. This is where we had all of the question and answers. This was developed by Cha-Cha, and it's also powered by Cha-Cha, so we had all of this huge database of questions and answers that our volunteers could go in and search. The people. So we had some amazing volunteers from Ball State, IUPUI, and Butler. We wouldn't have been able to do it without them. I think we overshot the need. We probably had a few more extra people there than we needed on each shift, but it hadn't been done before, so there was a lot of sitting around for some of them, and then others were just pumping out answers left and right. So it was just a huge help having these student volunteers that came in, and on purpose we tried to give them very little training in the beginning. We didn't want this to be very business-like. We wanted to be able to respond to people like people. We wanted people to know that there was those people, those social media users on the other end. We wanted them to know that there were people who were doing work on the back end, and it wasn't just a faceless company, people just responding to stuff on the fly with planned answers. So we gave them very little training on the tool, on everything, so that they would have to go in and really learn the best ways to do it and then give feedback on what they did. So the students were amazing. A little bit about the campaign. So email campaign, we had email going just like we did with social media and with the website. It was pretty awesome. We were all able to communicate the same messages. So we had Innovative and ExactTarget was working on the website and email, and we were working in the social space. And the three companies that wouldn't typically work that close together on a day-to-day basis, we worked as one team, and it was really cool. And it really helped get messages out to the right platforms. As well as the Social 46. So if you guys are familiar with this, we partnered with Clout and grabbed this 46 of the most influential people according to Clout in the city, and basically trained them and asked them to become advocates for Indianapolis and for the Super Bowl, just to create a little extra buzz, especially in that first week when things were slow and we wanted people to come down and experience the NFL experience. And that was a pretty awesome initiative too. 46 Stories, another initiative that we had going on Foursquare, and finally Supercars, which you could check into on Foursquare after they all separated. So there's lots of different things going. Instagram, we also utilized Instagram and had people posting photos to our account via Instagram and talking about the Super Bowl and all the things that were going on. The Super Street teams, this was actually really cool. We had planned on our entire structure was from a year and a half when we first sat down and planned this, was that we needed people on the streets that we could interact with. Come Super Bowl time, we didn't interact with them once, but they were there and they did a really good job, but we did not get to interact with them hardly at all. We ended up sending out our own content people so we didn't have to bother them because they were really busy. But I'm sure if you guys were downtown, you got to see those guys out there operating on the iPads. The N60 social sharing kiosk. I'm not sure if any of you got to take pictures with this, but this is a really cool initiative, also put together at the very last minute. Basically, you could stand in front of these kiosks and take a photo, give them your email address and your Facebook account, and it will post it to Facebook, and it'll send you an email, and we would get the photos and the videos, and we had to go through and approve all of these, put them up on Flickr, put them up on YouTube, and it was one of the best user-generated content experiences we could ever have. Tons of content being generated, lots of really fun and fun stuff, and if you guys could have watched some of the videos, it was hilarious. So the ones late at night were just, oh man, they were awesome. A little bit about the bilingual stuff. Again, it's funny, Toby put in here that we use Google Translate. We did not use Google Translate to answer any questions. Believe me, it was when we did Google Translate, it came out to be a completely different answer than we wanted to give. We ended up using, one of our students was from Venezuela, I believe, and he actually sat down and helped answer questions on each one of his shifts. So there were not very many questions in Spanish. Any of our monitoring that was being done was mostly, anytime that mentioned football, it was around soccer, and anytime that it mentioned Super Bowl, it was around how annoying the Super Bowl was to the Spanish-speaking community. But so it wasn't something that we had to answer a lot of questions to, but we did come semi-prepared to do those answers and get that out. So that was pretty cool, being able to help those people out. The outcomes, a little bit about the response we got. Everyone was pretty happy. We had some people come through our office that I don't think we're ever going to have come through our office for any reason again. Arian Foster sat down and actually responded to tweets. Good story. He actually sat down and wrote out a tweet, and he misspelled 2 words, and I told him, and he just turned. There was a camera on him. He turned and just told me, "Don't ever correct me in front of the camera." And I was like, man, I'm sorry. But he had some fun in there, but it was a good time. Peter King from Sports Illustrated came in and talked about what we were doing. There's the entire Notre Dame digital media group came in to see what we were doing, how we were doing it, and my favorite, Blue 2, came into the office and destroyed Toby's little robot, which was awesome. It was cool. Subway Jared came in. The volunteers were super excited about that. That was awesome. Charlie the Cardinal came in. We had just a massive amount of media coverage around the Social Media Command Center. We hoped that we would, but it wasn't something that we didn't expect it to be anywhere near the coverage that we got. The media value was pretty massive, and inside the infographic that's become public, I'm sure you guys have seen that, and if you haven't, I can send that to anybody who wants it, but it describes exactly what the media value was of everything that we did. So our original goal was to have a 5,000 total audience that came from the Super Bowl. They wanted to have 5,000 combined Twitter, Facebook, YouTube subscribers, and we kind of told them, well, I think we can do better than that. And their response was, well, no, we don't know how big this is going to be and everything. Well, we kind of blew those numbers out of the water. We had 17,000 Facebook followers by the end of everything, almost 30,000 Twitter followers. We had 5,000 people on Foursquare, and YouTube had 77 subscribers, but YouTube was one of our biggest drivers of traffic and content. So it was a pretty successful adventure there, and you can see that our number just absolutely boomed a couple weeks out before the Super Bowl, as you would expect. Our value that we were able to produce during the Super Bowl, we had 64 million impressions. That was we were kind of surprised that the local Super Bowls get this. This isn't the NFL. This is our local efforts that we're able to do these things. Our average daily impression was almost 2 million. Our daily value was just off the charts. So it was wildly successful, and we planned on it being successful, and we really wanted it to be, but I think if Tully was here, he'd probably tell you that it kind of blew our expectations out of the water. So the sentiment around Indianapolis and the Super Bowl, I think everyone pretty much knows this, but the formal numbers, we were at 3-1, positive to negative in the beginning. At kickoff, we were at 3.6 to 1, so what we had planned on was when the people from Indiana were down at downtown and could actually be interacting with all the stuff, we expected our sentiment to be off the chart positive, and we expected it to take a huge dip and go down, just like any event does when it actually happens. That didn't happen for us. It actually went up, and we credit that to all of the efforts that we were making as a host committee, not just from an interactive perspective, but since we're measuring sentiment online, it was all us. So that's what I say. So our as far as engagement went, our engagement was always really good around the Super Bowl, but it was mostly local. We had friends and followers from all over the world following us pretty early on, but the people who started interacting with us close to the Super Bowl was pretty awesome. It went from a local campaign to being an international campaign really quickly, and people were able to find the local Super Bowl host committee page and actually interact with us. People who were in the city, but also people who weren't in the city who were just wanting to know what was going on. So it kind of proved our theory right that Dallas kind of missed out by not taking into account what the power of social media will be both here and around the country and world. These charts are all about click-throughs and comments and likes and replies, and the easiest way to put it is that everything boomed up and to the right close to the game. So you can see our likes, our Facebook audience became much more engaged closer to the event, but our reach with Twitter absolutely boomed off the charts. A lot in part to what we were doing, a lot of the celebrities that were coming in, but early on it really helped to get the ball rolling with the Social 46 helping us out there. So a little bit about our clout. This is kind of cool. We don't technically use clout to measure influence for most of our clients, but clout was kind of the easiest and fastest way to be able to do that during the Super Bowl. And one thing that we are incredibly proud about is to say that we ended up at the end of the game having a higher clout score than the actual Super Bowl, the NFL Super Bowl's accounts. So that was a big deal for us. That we set out with a goal of we wanted to be better than what the NFL brought to the table, but we knew that it would be tough, but we were actually able to accomplish that. So a little bit about the other platforms that we haven't really spent much time on. We had 14,500 check-ins on Foursquare. There was 446 views on our specials. There was 259 specials were unlocked. It was pretty even split between male and female, which was pretty awesome. We thought that it would be more male-based. If we talked all about sports, we tried to even our content out between sports and the event itself, and it really paid off in the end, getting more people involved. The number one refer to the website was social media, which was also pretty cool. We watched the website traffic in real time throughout the whole week, which is pretty nerdy, but at the same time, we wanted to see the real ramifications of what we were doing, and that's it turned out that the ramifications were pretty huge. We were the number one referring service outside of Google. So, and like this just kind of shows off a little bit about what the world said about Indy once the Super Bowl was here. So it's not just all the numbers are one thing, but to see what people actually posted and actually took time to do, in regards to all of the efforts we were making here in Indianapolis, not just online but everywhere. There's a lot of people out there advocating for us, and some of them were pretty big names, so that's pretty cool. Bluetooth shows up a lot. You can tell we love Bluetooth. All right, so one of the things that we don't typically talk about, and I'm going to breeze through it really fast, is that the website on Super Bowl morning was hacked. It was not cool, but at the same time, the efforts that our team made to actually get the problem fixed were pretty huge. We learned a lot. Crisis management is one of those things. The crisis response, crisis management is one of those things that you plan for and you have strategies for and you're ready for, but you hope you never used. And on the morning of the Super Bowl, we finally got to use all of the planning, all the work we did in the risk section of groundwork to actually be ready for when this happened. And you can see in the code here a guy who says he was feeling bored, decided he would hack the official Super Bowl website. So we had to go, actually our student volunteers actually found this and found it on Twitter, was how we found out that this had even happened. We saw it on Twitter before anyone even noticed it on the website. So another benefit of having the command center, having people monitoring in real time. We were able to go in, first of all, and get the website fixed and secured. Innovative was incredibly fast with that. It was great. Within about 5 minutes of being up, it was removed. The problem was the damage had already been done, and about a dozen people or so had already tweeted that they had seen the website. So what we did was, the first thing we did was we found a blog posted a picture of the website being hacked with our logo on it. So we immediately contacted the blog and basically let him know nicely that he was violating copyright law by putting our logo on his website, and he very quickly put it down and said, "Wow, I must be important. The Super Bowl just called me." So we then thanked him very graciously for taking it down, and we also responded. We spent the next about hour and a half or so responding to people who had seen it and telling them how to basically remove that image from their computer so that they won't see it anymore. So that's a little bit about the Social Media Command Center. It's a lot of bit about it. I talked a little bit longer than I wanted, but any questions? Big room, nobody has any questions. What do you got?
What happens to the Super Bowl Facebook page? Where does it go from here?
The Facebook page is going to come down. The Twitter page is going to be shifted to, I believe, the Indiana Sports Corp. So I believe that's the plan, but they're still hashing out what they want to do with it. We had the idea of gifting it to New Orleans so that they could start with a big audience, but I think we're going to, keep it here in Indy. So. What's up?
We noticed actually just yesterday that IndianapolisSuperBowl.com has been taken down by the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know anything?
Well, IndianapolisSuperBowl.com is actually the host committee. Okay. So the NFL didn't have anything to do with it unless they don't like something, and then they would take it down.
I just said that they were the registered trade. The domain.
They do now. But it was the website was owned and operated by the host committee, and it's it's somebody else's Super Bowl now.
Okay.
Anybody else? Good.
Your target market were the fans and the visitors of Indianapolis, or did you have any niche markets that you were going after, also like the media, the visiting media, or anything like that you were sending unique messages specifically to those groups?
Hey Ryan, can you just repeat the question for the video?
Sure. The question is, was there any other basically target audiences outside of the fans, specifically maybe the media? Well, obviously the media was a pretty huge part of what we were doing, but we had almost a separate initiative for them because we communicate with the media differently than we do with social media users. So we were able to, what we did with the media is we reached out to them individually. So rather than it being a public campaign where we were just tweeting openly to them, a lot of times we were sending them direct messages or we were sending them direct emails and with information on what we were doing. So it was mostly sticking to the locals who were going to be coming in that first week, because we wanted to drive as much traffic downtown as we could. Especially wanted to get all the local people to come down and see it in the first week so that they would be out of downtown when the huge amount of traffic came in the next week. So then the next week was dealing with visitors. Both, it didn't really matter who the visitor was. If you were here and you were experiencing our city, we wanted to make sure it was the best possible experience we could make for you. So,
what is sentiment and how do you measure it for your purposes?
Sentiment is what I like to call a CEO metric. It's something that when you actually break it down, it's really hard to get a really viable number. But what it is basically you take a certain amount of keywords, and then those keywords are put into a database and registered against other keywords that are determined whether those are positive, neutral, or negative. So if someone says sucks, that's likely going to be negative. And so if that coincides with one of your other keywords like Super Bowl, then we're going to catch it as a negative comment. So the problem is with sentiment and all sentiment analysis is that it's going to pull in a lot of stuff that's just not relevant. And the systems typically, they're getting better and better, doing a good job of weeding those out and making them a little bit more moderatable. But the bottom line is it's never going to be perfect because you're going to get a lot of stuff mixed in there. So we measure the way that we look at it in the world of sentiment is what we're looking for is anomalies. We're looking for if sentiment is 6 to 1, if it's 6 times more positive than negative, but all of a sudden the next week it drops down to 2, something happened. It doesn't matter which sentiment software you're using, something happened that people are talking about you negatively. We also look at it on the other end. If it jumps to 12 and it was at 6, why did it do that? And did we actually do anything to cause that, or was it just a coincidence? Usually it's not when you get a big jump like that.
Will you tell us a little bit about your organizational structure in terms of how you structured people monitoring the traffic and the talk that was going on, and then assigning tasks and assigning responses? Will you tell us about how you organize that?
Sure. So how the command center was structured, it's actually pretty cool because the command center was structured just as a bigger scale radius. We were taking our day-to-day things that we know and have learned from doing this for years and then integrated it into an event. So for instance, we had no different than what we have day to day. We had a certain number of people who were monitoring. Those were our volunteers. They were monitoring. We had anywhere between, sometimes we had 3, sometimes we had 6, sometimes we had 12. There was a pretty complex schedule moving up to the game. But the volunteers were monitoring. They were going through and finding things that we could respond to. They were creating the response, looking for the response, assigning a task to what we called our editor. No different than what we do every day. The editor just typically is our client. So once it got to us, we looked at it and said, okay, we need to change a couple words around to make it be a little bit more on the voice. We maybe need to look at who we're responding to and make sure that it's not someone who's just constantly asking questions over and over again to take up time, stuff like that. That was the editor's job. The editor's job was to also look for ways to capitalize on this. So if we're answering the same questions over and over again, it's kind of the editor's job to say, okay, we're getting a ton of questions on this. We need to go ahead and proactively put out a message saying whatever it was. So the editor then put the post into a queue, and that queue was either go live right now, or it was maybe scheduled out to go live a little bit later because maybe a message that was of more importance was getting ready to go live. So the editor was kind of our controller of when messages were going out and what messages were going out. And then all through that process, we had someone, what we called the director at the time, was looking at what was going on, at all of the questions that were being responded to, looking at the amount of usage, looking at what platforms were getting the most questions, and that was oftentimes me going through and seeing, are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? Are the volunteers actually finding things? Have the volunteers been, all of a sudden they were responding to things like 3 or 4 times in an hour, but all of a sudden they're responding to maybe 1 question in an hour? Maybe it's less traffic, or maybe they're really tired because they've been looking at a computer screen for 6 hours and they should go take a break. So that was how the internal structure was working. We had 3 distinct, different basic jobs that were happening at all times.
Quick question. I know now that you've had some weeks to pass I'm wondering if there's anything that you would have changed or done differently looking back now that you have some perspective, or ideas that you have that you didn't have time to incorporate, just kind of general looking back thoughts of what you would do differently.
Sure. So the question is, what would we do differently now after learning everything? I think the big thing is we had too many volunteers for each shift, especially early on. We had several volunteers who were basically we could have cut it in half, and but at the same time, it was good because we got to have college students in the office experiencing this and doing it. So it's kind of like, I would probably change it, but I don't know if I would want to, because we got to meet a lot of really talented college students that, if I had the budget, I'd hire most of them today. So that was a good thing. I think that maybe we wouldn't, this is maybe just me being a little selfish, but we wouldn't have had the hours we had. I mean, we were there a long time. We were working 12 to 14-hour days for the first week, and then we were working a little bit more like 16, 18-hour days the whole second week. And a lot of the time, especially at night, which was weird, we thought night was going to be when people were just crazy, tweeting, texting, asking tons of questions. Well, we found out that once they're down there, they don't want to ask questions. It's when they're on the way. It's when they're thinking about coming that they're asking those questions, and that they're in need of help. Once they're down there, they're pretty quiet. So we sat there in the office for hours at night, just like, okay, well, we haven't responded to anything in 2 hours, but we promised we'd be here. So that would probably be one thing, is we'd have cut some hours out at night. But the other thing is we're there to respond to any crisis situation. So it's really hard to not be there. So again, it's kind of a double-edged sword. But those are probably the two biggest things that I would say. Less pizza. We ate pizza a lot.
Two-part question. Is New Orleans going to copy what you guys did and then maybe expand on it and do different things? And then also for people that, obviously the Super Bowl is a beast in and of itself. Mm-hmm. International event, once a year. What are some basic things you would recommend to people that are running their own smaller events or organizational events that they might be able to take from what you guys did but on a smaller scale to show the benefits or show some of the results?
Okay, so the first question is New Orleans going to copy? New Orleans their host committee came to the command center during the event several times, and we've been talking with them on how we can help them do theirs. You saw the office build out, and you saw a lot went into it, and to say that Radius committed some money into this would be kind of an understatement. So the idea is we want to help out as much as we can, but at the same time, this was a one-time thing for at least for the way that we did it. It's a massive undertaking. It took us a year and a half to plan and get ready for, and we want to help and do it as much as we can, but probably more from a consulting point of view. So hopefully they're going to use it. We've talked about it a lot with them. They're more interested. The way that our command center is built was we can do events from anywhere in the world. We don't have to be in the city of the event, but we've kind of recommended to them for an event like this, for the Super Bowl, on a volunteer basis, you might as well do it in New Orleans. So hopefully they will. Hopefully. Second part, already forgot it.
Oh, just for people that are running their smaller scale events.
Smaller scale, yeah.
What are some tips, basic things that you can provide to them for, whether it's the hashtags or monitoring check-ins or things like that?
I would say that on a smaller scale, the biggest thing is to get everything. You can't undervalue planning. Our planning process took a long time to get put together. We put together, the groundwork process took about 2 months to get together. It took another 3 or 4 months to get approved by the host committee. And then it took a month of pretty much training to get our staff to understand what those planning tools were and how it was going to all work, what we were doing. So I would say plan it out, understand the risk, understand what the ramifications of what you're doing are, not just the benefits of it, because a lot of times they're just as equal on the other side, and you have to be ready for that. Planning ahead is the same. I'm stuck on planning, but it's you said hashtags and stuff like that. One thing that we did was we pretty much said we are going to have one hashtag that we are going to support, and that's what we want people to use. And then we took that to the Social 46. We took that to whenever every post that we did had that hashtag on it. And when people would tweet to us with the wrong hashtag, not wrong hashtag, but not the hashtag we were trying to push, we would then respond with the hashtag we wanted. So it's a matter of know what you want and stick to it. Don't let it get out of control. You can manage that if you have the people and the resources and the understanding of how it's doing, how all of those things, get used and go viral. But I would say more than anything, it's the people. We had amazing volunteers that came to help in a training process that was very light, but it was very light for a reason, and it was really hard not to jump in and help the volunteers and say, you need to do this and this and this. We didn't want to do that. We wanted them to be able to do it on their own and get comfortable with it. So it was not a job. It was more fun, and that can be really hard to do. So I would recommend kind of keeping it freewheeling and understanding that no matter what you're doing, no matter how serious the message is that you're conveying on social media, it's still social media, and the people you're conveying it to are not there for serious alerts and messages. They're there for the most part to have fun. So anybody else?
Just trying to understand the whole process. Would you not want to, there's a host committee, I think they move or reside in a place every 3 years, and they just kind of rotate. So for future planning, since it was such a huge success, just thinking about the company as a whole, wouldn't you want to either patent that or not let? I would just assume that maybe Exact Target's going to do the same thing, and now they're might have already migrated to that next level. I'm just thinking about your company, Radius as a whole, would want to do that kind of maneuver, since it took you a year and a half to kind of have this forethought for Indianapolis, and since it's a local company, but maybe do that for other cities and just kind of, if you haven't already thought about or doing that already, which is under wrap, so it'd be awesome. But just trying to think about
Super secret plan.
yeah. I was just trying to think if that's what you guys were, maybe as a whole, or just thinking, wow, that was awesome. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and the idea of a command center, especially for social media, isn't brand new. Gatorade actually came out with one first, and it was a couple of years ago, and then Dell came out with another one. And the idea of it being about how to respond is a little bit different. No company, unless you own the tool and you own all of the process of the tool, we can't say that no one else can do it. So we disclose we use the Awareness Social Network Hub. It's awesome and we love it, and we can't necessarily copyright any process that we use within that to get things done. We do use a little bit different process than what the tool was meant to do, or was kind of in their eyes, the developer's eyes, of how to use it. So it's something that we've looked at. We've talked to a lot of different events. We've already talked to the New York City Marathon. We've talked to the Boston Marathon, the Olympics for this year in London. We've done a lot of now going out and talking to other people. The problem is the way that we did it, we had to rely on volunteers to be able to staff this up to do it at the level that we were talking about. So it's really hard to say that no one else can. It's really hard to say that you like New Orleans, no, you can't use our process because it was our process, but also there's no way you can afford to bring us down to do it. So it's a cool. We like to think that that year and a half of planning makes us valuable to people who want to do this. It's a proven track record, so we're not so much worried about other people doing it, because we kind of feel like we have now basically the base of knowledge to get it done. So. That's a good question. We've the level of exposure we have now compared to what we did before the Super Bowl it's not, you can't even compare the two. We go into meetings with brands that we knew that we would eventually get to. We're pretty confident in our business and our business model and the people that we have. So we kind of knew that we would be getting into some of these boardrooms with some of these brands that we're talking to now, but I don't think we had any idea that we'd do it this fast. So, I mean, Tolby's not here right now because he's out on a sales call. So, I mean, we're ready for it. We've been built from the very beginning, ready to expand and scale really fast and hire lots of people in lots of different markets. So we're kind of ready for it, but we're always kind of you know, are we really going to boom and hire 4 people in a week and expand to another city? And all of a sudden it's looking like, yeah, we are, and it's probably going to happen in the next few months. So it's pretty cool, and it's pretty cool when we do go to sit in some of these boardrooms or people call us, and it used to, we have to explain what Radius was. People would call us Radios or stuff like that because of our logo, because of our the way it's spelled. But now we go into meetings and people are like, "This is Radius," and people are like, "Oh yeah, I know Radius," which is cool. And we worked really, really hard for a really long time to get to this point. So it's kind of cool to finally get some recognition for it, because we're always behind the scenes. So
One last question.
good.
Which celebrity or athlete used the hashtag most effectively or most often that you've noticed?
Good question. To be honest, I mean,
And I can't be credible.
to be honest, it's probably Blue too. We got so no. Arian Foster came in. When he came in, we got a lot of buzz after he came in. But I would say that you know, Blue 2 is pretty awesome. We got a lot of buzz that day. It was kind of a slow day, and then when he started tweeting from our office, it kind of changed the day up a little bit.